Hi there, welcome to another video of mine, and today we shall have a look at the Canon 7. For those of you who are a bit young, possibly you might get confused. This is not an EOS 7. So this is the Canon 7, which is a rangefinder camera. A rangefinder camera means that it is not a reflex camera, that it doesn't have a prism or a mirror, so it is a mirrorless camera. Yes, it is. And it was Canon's first love. This is how Canon started to produce cameras, rangefinders, cameras of this type. The Canon 7 that we have here is famous because, not so much because of the camera itself, but because of the lens. You are looking at what people normally call the Canon Dream lens, the 50mm 0.95. It's a huge piece of glass, as you can see, and you can see my reflection here. Hi there. This is 1961, don't forget, and this lens caused a lot of noise at the time because it was the world's fastest production lens for 35mm. And it stayed that way for many years, at least in 50mm form. And now we are seeing a new wave of fast lens with also 0.95 that emulate the idea that is behind this lens. People normally criticize the lens for being huge, because it is, but in my opinion it is super heavy. It's half a kilo. That's 2 pounds? 1 pound, sorry. It's really, it weighs as much as the camera. It's really very, very heavy. But comparing to modern fast lenses, this one has a huge diameter of 72. It takes filters. But modern ones are longer. So, to tell the truth, I don't know if I had to buy one, which type of lens would I prefer? This one or a longer and less, with a smaller diameter. Anyway, the 7, and today this is new. The 7 is a camera that replaced the Canon P, and I was saying that today this is a new thing. We shall have a look at a camera that predecessed this one, so this video will be a sort of 3-in-1. So the camera that the Canon 7 replaced is this one. It's the Canon P. It's a very nice rangefinder tool that takes like screw mount lenses, so it has an interchangeable lens mount like all Canon rangefinder from this series. So this is not Canonet cameras. They are not Canonet cameras, so they have a focal plane shutter, not a leaf shutter, and you can change lenses. For instance, here we have a Russian lens. I put it here because the original lens of this camera is horrible to look at, although I clean it, and it works very well, and it has a very nice image quality. This is the Canon 50mm 1.8, but as you can see, it's heavily dented. I don't know what sort of life it led, but it was not a good one. Anyway, so you see these cameras, this one, and most Canon rangefinders, so they can take any lens as long as it is L39, like a 39 mount. There are some exceptions, wide angles with a large protruding element, like the 35 Biogon from Zeiss, or Jupiter 11, I think, from the Russians. But they can take modern lenses from Voigtlander. They can take Nikon or Nikkor lenses from the 50s, that Nikon also made lenses in L39 mount. So you can Fuji as well, so the problem is to find them and the price. But modern lenses are available from Voigtlander and other manufacturers, Voigtlander being the most respectable of them all, in my opinion. So the Canon P was launched at the late 50s, and the P stood for populaire, which means popular. It was for the masses. It was a camera intended to sell. It was, and it is, very simple. It's pleasant to look at. It's simple. It has no metering. Anyway, it has a very nice range viewfinder, combined with a rangefinder, of course, and it spots the lines for the frame lines for 35, 50, and 100 millimeter. It's really nice. It also has this curious, very fantastic flushed crank to rewind the film. I think it's a shame that Canon did not profit from this and apply it to other cameras, the idea or the principle. But mechanically it is basically as the Canon 7. They are very quiet, high quality build, and they feature, you shall see, a metal shutter that's horizontally run, but it's not made of cloth, it's made of metal. So that you can see that the 7 derives closely from the P. You can see that the chassis, I believe, is the same. So, but the 7 looks much more imposing, and this is because it's bigger, not bigger, but it's taller and gives more presence. And of course this lens, this huge lens, of course it gives all the presence that you can imagine. The camera has some differences with its predecessor. It still has the same shutter, but they added the T possibility for time. So you have B and T. T is lacking from the P model. T, if you are not familiarized, means time, and it allows you to have the shutter open as long as you like without having to press the shutter button. So it's different from B. So I remove my finger and the shutter is still open. To close it, I just turn the speed dial. Okay, you can see at the top that we have a window here, and this is from the meter. There is a selenium meter here that's very well integrated into the camera, and I believe it was Canon's first camera with an integrated metering system. Different, is also there is a window for illuminating the frames that you see. The frames indicate the focal length or the angle of view of the focal length of the lens that we use. So here you can select, and the camera will show you once at a time for most frames, except for 85 and 100, which are combined, and then 135. So there is one small problem. Somehow Canon did not see fit to put a cold shoe here for an auxiliary finder. So if you want to use a 28mm lens, no can do with the Canon 7. I think there is an accessory from Canon that sells for as much as the camera, although it's not that difficult to make one too. So let's say that it might not be as pretty as the original one, but it's not very difficult to make a sort of bracket to put something that can carry a separate viewfinder for wide angles. So here you have the shutter button, and it has 3 positions. A for not automatic, possibly for advanced, I don't know. Then you have a red dot, which means the shutter is locked, and you have R, which is to rewind the film. Let's say that the Canon P also does this, but the shutter lock is not labeled. Here you have, like the Canon P, the indicator that the film is advancing with this neat red dot that revolves. This is the frame counter, and here we have this switch with an orange and black dot, and they correspond to the scales here of the meter. So if you use the orange dot, it means that the meter has extra sensitivity for low light, so you should use the orange scale. If you are outside and you want to use the meter, then you should put it in the black dot here, possibly you can see, and follow the white scale here. So the meter is combined with the speeds. So you look at here, this meter still works, and works well, because I've just developed a film that you're going to see, and the frames are, it seems, well exposed. So you just have to follow the needle that points to the correct aperture. It is considered 0.95. So it starts at 0.95 and it goes all the way to f22. There is another command here, which is to input the ASA or ISO film speed into the shutter dial selector, speed selector, and that's it. It's a pretty simple camera. So we can now have a look at the camera that opens exactly the same way as any other Canon, meaning the Canon P, and this is the infamous or famous shutter from Canon that uses metal curtains instead of cloth. The reason why they chose this is, of course, that these curtains are completely resistant to sun rays. So one of the problems that rangefinders have, because they have no mirror to protect the curtains, is that the lens acts as an amplifier, and so it concentrates the rays of the sun into the cloth and burns holes into that. Here, because the you cannot burn holes through metal. Well, you can, but not with a lens and with the light, with the sunlight. There are a few problems with this system. So the main advantage is, theoretically, you will never burn a curtain because of the sun, that's for sure. But they tend to wrinkle, and they begin to have, really to look bad. But this one is not too bad. But they start to gain some marks, but that doesn't really affect their performance. But if one of these curtains is broken, because as you're going to see, but I will warn you first, accidents can occur, and due to metal fatigue, due to mechanical failure, the curtains can torn and rip, and so it is a problem because the camera is basically doomed. So you see that this is a focal plane shutter, just like an SLR. I think this one that I have is slightly noisier than the ones that I've seen, than the Canon P, and the other, I've got another one here that sadly we cannot hear the shutter working. Anyway, this room reverberates a lot, so it's not the ideal room to conduct any silence test, but it is anyway quieter than an SLR using the same type of shutter with curtains. So there is a difference. There is also a difference, is that although this winding lever is quite pleasant, actually it really does not compare to any of the classic rangefinder Canons. This is simply, you can't hear just this slight click at the end. On the P, it's the same. So it's really very, very quiet. These are high quality cameras. Of course, they were made to a price. I don't know if they were that cheap back then in the 60s. Like I told you, this camera was launched in 61, and I really don't know how much it was that Canon wanted for the camera. Now, let's turn our attention to the main thing of the camera. Don't pay attention to this. This is my system so that the camera doesn't become marked because of the strap. These are leather pieces. This lens is so big and heavy that I think this is the explanation. That Canon, this is the only lens from the lens system that Canon had for its rangefinders that sports bayonet mount. And I'm going to remove the lens. As you can see, opposite to the Canon P, you have an external bayonet, and here you don't have. You just have the thread for the L39 lens, but the 7 can perfectly work with any L39 lens that was made for the Leica register, except for some very wide angles or some wide angles. Now, this system is not a new idea because I think Contax had this for their longer focal range lenses, for their telelenses. So they had an inner bayonet and an outer bayonet. And I think that Canon was a bit, I don't know, they were afraid possibly that the weight of this lens would twist or warp the mount, I don't know. So they opted for this. This is a highly complicated piece of machinery, as you can see. It's it follows the same breech lock system, so dear to Canon, and you can see the lens here in all its glory, at least the back part of it. And to mount it, you have to coincide this dot here with this red dot here. So hopefully I will get this right. Okay, and twist, and the lens is in place. The lens focuses from 3.5 feet, which is more or less 1 meter, to infinity, and it's a bit like the East German lenses. You have to turn it a lot to get it into focus. Of course, the lens was made, and I don't know really why they made a 0.95 lens. This lens exists in another version, TV lens, and perhaps it was for television that they were thinking, and to better distribute the costs, they issued a 35mm version, or I don't know. Or it could be that Canon, knowing that the era of rangefinders was coming to an end because Nikon had already left the market, and Leica was really had a product that was something, which was the Leica M3, and they didn't or they couldn't compete with that. But optically, they came out with something that took everybody by storm. I don't know if it was a revenge or not, a sort of fancy goodbye, sort of we can do it, we could have done it, but we just don't or just won't. I don't know. Anyway, the lens exists in a TV version. I don't think it has the same mount. I've never seen one. To be honest, I have never seen another one besides mine. So I don't know if they work with the camera or not. Possibly not, or they will need some sort of adapting. I don't know. Well, so the 7 is this, and now I have to warn you about something, about viewers' discretion and parental guidance and all that, because what you're going to see is not very nice. So, this model lasted until 1967, I believe, and then it was replaced by this, which is the Canon 7S. The Canon 7S was produced in tiny numbers compared with the Canon 7, that more than 100,000 were made. Of these, I believe that only 16,000 or something like that were made. And so it's a much rarer camera, but it is basically the same camera, but all the criticism that people made was solved. So we have a cold shoe here, if you want to use that famous auxiliary finder for wide angles or whatever. You don't have a selenium meter anymore, you have a CDS, and still after all these years it works. So let me just turn it on. Hope you can see it. But it works. Yes, it works, as you can see. Everything works. So you have a selenium. We don't have a selenium meter anymore, and we have the cold shoe, and that's about it. And of course here the meter sports 2 positions, high and low, which is the same system. This is for low light and high light, inverted commas. So you would normally use this outside and this inside. So for the rest, the camera has the same functionalities. It is the same camera, but with some goodies. Now, the horror part and what I was talking about a while ago, about the shutter curtains being made of metal. This is what happens when something goes horribly wrong. So you see metal tone. It wasn't mine doing, so I bought the camera as it is. And as you can see, it's really a dreadful thing to see such a fine camera. And this camera, I believe, is condemned, because I can find anyone who will have a go at repairing it because of these curtains. If it used cloth curtains, then it would be much easier to replace them. But with metal curtains, it's really very, very difficult. First, to find them, which would have to come from another Canon with a more serious problem than this, which is hard to imagine, except for a camera that has fallen to the floor and smashed, and I don't know. And then for the price, because I am not a rich person and I would have to win the lottery to have the camera repaired. I really regret it, because it's a fine camera, and they had another model for about a year with a larger rewind crank here, but basically it is the same, and so it is the last of the line, and I really would like to have it running, but as it is impossible. Anyway, so today I brought you the Canon 7, the Canon 7S, and let's make room for the Canon P. So in terms of mechanics or internals, they are pretty much the same, and they are fine. They are, like I already said, built, really well built, and it's a pleasure to use one of them today. As for the lens, you will see some pictures at the end of the video. I will not comment on the quality of it or the lack of quality of it. That's up to you. I'm no lens tester. What I can say is that it's a pain to go out into the street with this camera because of the weight, because it makes focusing slower, because the lens is so big. So I think the normal 1.4 lens is possibly the best, or the 1.8 the best in terms of balance for the camera, at least to me. But the camera is really very nice to use. I really enjoy taking pictures with this, and I will use it more. The lens, I don't know. I still have my doubts because we have to hit the gym first in order to strengthen the back and our arms and neck because this is really a very heavy camera. But any of them, of course this is a non-shooter, but it's the same as this one, is very nice to use, and possibly, I don't know how a Nikon is, but in terms of like a screw mount cameras, I only have these ones and the Russians, and there is absolutely no comparison between a Canon P, for instance, and the most expensive or best Russian LTM cameras. For the price of this Canon P, you can buy a Zorky 3, for instance, which is a rare model, a beautiful model, but in terms of quality, in terms of viewfinder, in terms of practicality, it's light years from this one. The Zorky 6 is a very nice rangefinder, but only if it costs 40 euros or something like that with lens. More than that, it's preferable to buy one of these, the body only, real cheap, and then buy a Soviet lens or any other, because the viewfinder alone makes the camera more interesting, and mechanically it's another world, it's another dream, and not this one. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this long video, but anyway, it was a 3-in-1 video. Thank you for getting to know my 3 Canons. I hope to see you very soon in another video of mine. Bye.